Say, can you tell if a person is truly intelligent? Most people think they can figure it out easily. Probably the smartest person is the most confident person in the room. The one who never stops talking, answers quickly, the long-metted. The person who has an opinion on everything. But psychology has been saying the exact opposite for years. Because true intelligence, most of the time, it doesn't attract attention. It is quiet because it doesn't feel the need to prove itself. Sometimes even the owner cannot fully understand what they are experiencing. Maybe you too have felt a little different from other people throughout your life. You got tired in crowds. Simple conversations felt boring to you. Before going to sleep at night, you couldn't quiet your mind. Or events that people easily pass by continued to live in your mind for days. Of course, none of these alone mean that you have a high IQ. But the interesting thing is, psychology research shows that the same behavioral patterns repeatedly appear in people with high cognitive capacity. Because high IQ is not just thinking faster. It means seeing the world from a different angle. And sometimes, although this may look like an advantage from the outside, from the inside, it can turn into a rather lonely experience. Now, I am going to tell you the 11 psychological traits that research most frequently observes in people. Loneliness doesn't bother them. Most people get uneasy when silence increases. They look at their phone, call someone, listen to music. Because loneliness is a feeling to be avoided for many people. But there are some people, when silence begins, they start to take a deep breath for the first time. Not because they hate people, but because they can finally hear their own thoughts. For many people with high IQ, loneliness is not a punishment. It is a need. Because their brains process information non-stop all day long. They analyze a conversation they had over and over again. They imagine events that haven't happened yet in their minds. They think of dozens of different solutions to a problem. They take precautions. Crowded environments, on the other hand, constantly interrupt this process. A striking study conducted by the London School of Economics also points to this. According to the study, while frequent social interaction is good for most people, it does not show the same effect in individuals with high intelligence, because their mind not in the crowd rests in silence. Perhaps this is why, while people thought you were antisocial, you actually just needed a little rest. Their minds never stop. No, I have a question for you. Have you ever laid down in bed at night and thought over and over about a tiny conversation you had hours ago? I wish I had said this. I wonder why they did that. What if that was actually what they meant? Yes, most people experience this occasionally, but the minds of people with high IQ almost constantly work this way. One thought gives birth to another. One question means 10 new questions. Even when trying to rest, the brain continues to work in the background. Psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski defined this as overexcitability, meaning that this mind works much more intensely than normal. Therefore, many gifted people get tired even of themselves. Neuroscience research also supports this. In high IQ individuals, communication between different regions of the brain is stronger. While this makes it an asset to connect much faster, it comes with a price: fatigue. The brain starts working like a motor with no off switch. And sometimes, the biggest problem is not being unable to think. It is being unable to stop thinking, even for a single moment. They experience emotions much deeper than you think. People generally think of intelligence equals logic. As if very smart people feel less. But research says the exact opposite. Many people with high IQ can feel events that others forget in a few minutes for days. A movie scene, a song, the pain experienced by someone they don't know, continues to live in their minds for a long time, because they don't just see the event, they also see the feelings and plot behind that event. Psychologist Dabrowski named this emotional hypersensitivity, meaning an extraordinary sensitivity to beauty, pain, empathy, and human behavior. The interesting part is that most of the time, no one notices this, because high IQ people have also learned to hide their emotions. They look calm on the outside. They look controlled. Sometimes they can even look cold, but inside them, there is a noise no one understands. They are not afraid to say, "I don't know." People generally think the smartest person is the person who has an answer to every question, yet truly smart people might be the ones who say, I don't know the most because as knowledge increases and certainty also grows. Someone who knows a subject superficially can be quite confident of themselves, but someone who has worked on the same subject for years realizes how many gaps they still have. In psychology, this is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with little knowledge often overestimate their knowledge. Real experts, on the other hand, know their limits. That's why people with high IQ pause before speaking definitively. They think, they look for evidence, and when necessary, they say, I don't know without hesitation. Because what matters to them is not to look right, but to get a little closer to the truth. They struggle to find people who think like them. Have you ever given up right in the middle of a conversation just as you were about to explain? Because you felt the person in front of you couldn't truly understand you. Maybe you changed the subject. Maybe you just smiled. Maybe you never said the real thought in your mind. It just spun in your head. Smart people experience this much more often than you think. This is not arrogance, nor is it looking down on anyone. The problem is, their minds naturally ask deeper questions. Most people think, what happened? They, on the other hand, why did it happen? Well, what if it were different? What is the invisible reason behind this? They think. Psychologist Led Hollingworth, after studying gifted adults for years, named this stimulus deprivation, meaning the mind not encountering deep enough conversations to truly nourish itself. That's why many high IQ people feel lonely even in crowds. Because there are people around them, but the number of people they can truly connect with is close to none. Over time, they start talking less. Because they have learned that explaining every thought and not being understood is exhausting. And while people think they are quiet people, there are conversations going on in their minds for hours. They are not afraid to change their minds. For most people, changing their mind means being wrong. That's why even if they encounter new evidence, they continue to stay in their old thoughts. But smart people do not carry their beliefs like their identities. For them, an idea is just the best explanation they have had up to that moment. If they find a better, logical explanation, they don't hesitate to drop the old idea, because their goal is to reach what is most correct, rather than being right. That's why they sometimes look indecisive from the outside. They were saying the exact opposite just last month. Yes. Because today they have information they didn't have last month. True intelligence is never failing to be wrong. When you realize you are wrong, it is changing it. And this requires much greater courage than is thought. They observe before they speak. When you walk into a room, what is the first thing you notice? Most people listen to what is being said. People with high IQ, on the other hand, notice what isn't said. Who is truly comfortable? Who is just acting? Who is not making eye contact while speaking? Who is smiling but actually angry? Who is constantly waiting for approval? For them, people are not limited to what they speak. Their tones of voice, pauses, gaze, even their silences carry information. That's why they don't speak immediately. They observe first, because they know that the more data they gather, the more accurate conclusion they can reach. Even human relationships are built on this. Research supports this as well. Individuals with high cognitive ability show above-average success in interpreting social cues. That's why sometimes the quietest person in the room is not the person who knows the least. Perhaps it is the person who notices the most. They procrastinate what they care about. Most people often misunderstand this. Haven't you started yet? Are you this lazy? You'll do it tomorrow. But the issue is usually not laziness. Quite the opposite. People with high IQ tend to procrastinate on the tasks they care about the most, because before starting, they think about everything in detail. They see all the flaws that might arise. Before taking even the first step, they visualize the outcome and possible scenarios in their minds. And that outcome determines whether they will reach the perfect image in their heads. Right at that moment, starting becomes difficult. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research shows that this situation is quite common in gifted individuals. The problem is not the fear of failure. The problem is the discomfort of knowing that the perfect idea in your head will not manifest with the same flawlessness in real life. That's why you wait. You prepare a little more. You gather a little more information. You plan a Little more. And without realizing it, months pass. Sometimes your biggest dreams actually do not come true, not because of a lack of talent, but because of overthinking. They get bored much sooner. Most people like habits. The same coffee. The same route. The same job. Because the familiar gives a sense of security. But for people with high IQ, doing the same things over and over again is mental fatigue over time, because their brain constantly wants something new, a new idea, a new problem, a new perspective. The moment they solve a subject, their mind is already after another question. That's why many high IQ people can start a hobby with great passion and completely abandon it a few months later. If they learn a job in a short time, they can suddenly lose interest. People looking from the outside might think they are indecisive, but this is less of an indecision and more of it no longer teaching them anything new. When the brain feels it has stopped growing, its motivation flies away too. They doubt themselves much more than expected. More a person knows, are they more certain. Truly smart people are the people who question themselves the most. Even when they make a decision, I wonder what I missed, they think, while defending an idea. What if I'm completely wrong? They cannot get the question out of their minds, because they see the complexity. They know that every answer gives birth to new questions. That's why they avoid speaking definitively. This might look like a lack of confidence, but it is not a lack of confidence. It is being aware of uncertainty. In fact, the person speaking the loudest is not the most knowledgeable person. The person remaining the quietest is just thinking a little longer to be sure. They never feel truly belonging anywhere. Perhaps this is the heaviest trait on this list. Many high IQ people carry a feeling throughout their lives that they struggle to describe, as if they don't quite belong where they are. In the crowd, but lonely. Together with people, but misunderstood, because the details they see when looking at the world are different from what most people notice, not just the result of an event. They also think about the why. Not what people say. They also hear what they don't say. Things that others forget in a few minutes continue to live in their minds for days. And over time, they begin to think, maybe the problem is with me. Your being different does not mean there is a problem with you. It means you experience the world differently. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, in his long-term studies with creative and high cognitive capacity people, drew attention to a common point. Most of these people struggled to put their inner worlds into words, because the experience they lived was not just thinking. It was seeing more at the same time, feeling more and questioning more. Living like this is sometimes a great advantage, but sometimes it is a disadvantage that makes a person feel lonely. One of the traits in this video, maybe a few, even most of them might have sounded familiar to you, but we shouldn't forget this. Having these traits does not mean you have a high IQ all by yourself. The human mind is too complex to be explained by a single list. But there is still an important truth psychology shows us. True intelligence is not always noticed from the outside. Sometimes the smartest people are the quietest ones. The ones who think the most are the ones who speak the least. And they fight their biggest battles where no one sees. Maybe for years you've been asking yourself why you don't feel like other people. Maybe the answer is not that you are lacking, it's just that you see the world through a different window. What about you? Which trait in this video resonated with you the most strongly? Let's discuss it in the comments. Maybe a single sentence you write will be good for someone else who has felt lonely for years. And if you want to explore the invisible sides of the human mind together, don't forget to subscribe to Arthur Telling.